So I've been trying to cover the Russia-Ukraine war as much as possible. I did a number of breaking news segments on the important developments that I hope you guys have checked out. If you haven't, pause this video and go check those out, because I feel like all of that information is necessary in order to digest what I'm about to tell you now. So we've gone over the complexities of the conflict and the reasons for the conflict, and the various claims from the different sides as to what's the key reason this is happening. But there's something that I definitely missed and overlooked that I came across this weekend. So there's this video on a channel by the name of Real Life Lore. Real Life Lore. I watch the channel every now and then. They have a video that catches my eye and I'll take a look. But they just released a video on February 26th entitled "Why Russia is Invading Ukraine." It's about 32 minutes long, the video, but man, it is the most detailed thing that I've seen yet on the topic, and I've seen a lot of stuff on the topic. And so before I show you this little clip, I'm gonna really, really stress that you should check out that entire video, "Why Russia is Invading Ukraine," from Real Life Lore. I don't think there really is such thing as being apolitical. I think everything is political to one extent or another, but this is as close as I've ever seen to just a raw retelling of the facts of the situation that gets us to where we are now. So the thing that I overlooked in the conflict is honestly natural gas. And let me just go ahead and show you the clip now so you can see. Here's some of the backstory that's been missing from almost everybody's analysis. And this is actually interesting because it shows you maybe a parallel between George W. Bush's war in Iraq and Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine. Take a look.
Back during the Soviet times, when Russia and Ukraine were both one country, pipelines were built across Ukraine almost like a bridge that transported gas directly from the Siberian sources to the customers in Europe. But then, all of a sudden, after the USSR's collapse, Ukraine was an independent country who was demanding tariffs to the tune of billions of dollars a year from Russia in order to continue using their country as a gas bridge to Europe. And Russia had no other choice but to agree, because the pipeline infrastructure anywhere else didn't yet exist. As late as 2005, 80% of Russia's gas exports heading to Europe were still flowing across pipelines through Ukraine. But in the decades since, Russia has sought to solve this over-reliance on Ukraine by building multiple new pipelines that avoid Ukraine entirely, like Yamal Europe across loyal Belarus, Nord Stream 1 and 2 beneath the Baltic that go directly from Russia to Germany, Moscow's largest single customer, along with South Stream, Blue Stream, and Turk Stream beneath the Black Sea. By 2024, Russia has plans to completely cease all of their gas exports through Ukraine entirely, and the government will save billions of dollars in tariffs as a result. But that is hardly what has been so threatening about Ukraine recently. Significantly more menacing to the perspective of Moscow was the discovery, for the first time in early 2012, that Ukraine's exclusive economic zone within the Black Sea may contain more than 2 trillion cubic meters worth of natural gas, largely concentrated around the Crimean Peninsula. To make matters even more interesting, further technological advancements in the early 2010s that enabled the successful drilling of natural gas and oil from shale rock unlocked the potential shale gas hotspots for Ukraine around Donetsk and Kharkiv in the east and around the Carpathians in the west. Beginning in 2012, there was suddenly a very real possibility that almost out of nowhere, Ukraine had the world's 14th largest reserves of natural gas, just behind Australia and Iraq. But as a relatively poor country, Ukraine lacked the finances, the technology, or the equipment to successfully harvest any of these resources in any large quantities. But that all changed when, shortly afterwards, the Ukrainian government began granting exploration and drilling rights to the likes of Shell and Exxon. It was suddenly possible that within a few years, these Western companies would enable Ukraine to transform into Europe's second petrostate, which would have not only been a direct and serious competitor to Russia's own gas supply to the European Union, and thus at the same time a major threat to the Russian government's budget and GDP, but would have also provided the easy path of eventual Ukrainian admission into the European Union and NATO as well. And this is what's really, in my opinion, what this whole situation is truly about. In 2012, at the time when these discoveries were initially made, the man in charge of Ukraine was Viktor Yanukovych, a pro-Russian politician who was keeping Ukraine more politically aligned with the interests of Moscow. So long as he was president, these discoveries were not directly threatening to Russia. But when suddenly in February 2014, his government was toppled in a pro-EU new and pro-Western revolution in Kiev, Moscow was very quick to take the opportunity to invade some of Ukraine, seize the Crimean Peninsula, and annex it in the name of historical claims and protecting ethnic Russians. But by seizing Crimea, the Russians also took direct control of 2/3 of Ukraine's coastline and, by extension, the vast majority of Ukraine's maritime exclusive economic zone, and, most critically, an estimated 80% of Ukraine's potential offshore oil and gas reserves.
So we now know that it's not just natural gas in the Crimean region. There's also giant natural gas deposits in eastern Ukraine and also in western Ukraine. You see where this is going? So when we used to talk about the war in Iraq, I think astute people from very early on were looking for, what are the ulterior motives? Like, what's the real reason that we're in Iraq? Because the thing that we were told made no sense. It didn't add up. We were told Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. Well, that turned out not to be true. And the implication was Saddam Hussein is a direct threat to the United States of America. And if he has those weapons of mass destruction, he might launch them on us at any second. That was just totally bogus. And so it was a war based on lies. We were even told early on that Saddam Hussein has connections to Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. That is definitely not true. He was a secular Ba'athist leader, and of course, Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda are Salafi jihadists. They're mortal enemies, in a sense. So they lie after lie after lie. Now, are there some people who probably drank the Kool-Aid and believed the propaganda from within the government? I'm sure there were. I'm sure. But there were also people who probably knew this isn't really the truth, or it's certainly not the entire picture. So the real reason, looking at it as an outsider and trying to be objective, we came to the conclusion that what's Iraq really about? Well, it's about imperial ambitions of the West. It's about geostrategic control of a vital region in the world. We couldn't control Saddam anymore. There was one time when he was a U.S. ally. He's no longer a U.S. ally, and he invaded Kuwait, and we thought this guy's a loose cannon. We got to get rid of him. And also, there's military-industrial complex profits, but oil was a big one. Oil was a big one. So now, look at how Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, and he gave an hour-long speech explaining exactly why he's doing it. Now, half of the speech was about the thing that we've always heard, which is the nominal defensive reason, which is, hey man, I told you guys, NATO, you can't expand to my border. That's an act of aggression on the West. How would you guys like it if we had, weapons in Mexico and Canada pointed right at you and did military drills on the border? That's unacceptable. This is a direct threat to us. That's the nominal defensive reason that he gave. But the other half of the speech was Vladimir Putin saying, look, Ukraine, we used to own you. You used to be ours. And really, you should still be ours. You owe a massive debt to us. We built you up. We shared a culture with you. You turned your back on us, and now you're working with the West, and that's unacceptable. So in a sense, Putin is admitting, I have imperial ambitions. I think the biggest mistake the Soviet Union made was being too lenient with these now post-Soviet states when we said, hey, you can leave if you want, no questions asked from the Soviet Union. That was a giant mistake. That was way too lenient. I wouldn't have given you that deal. This is the stuff that Putin's saying. So it's Russian imperial ambitions, geostrategic control of a vital region, just like Iraq and the United States. He can't control Zelensky. He can't control a more Western-aligned government, whereas previously with Yanukovych, he could, because Yanukovych was more aligned with Russia. But also, natural gas. He wants that natural gas. And so, look, this is a part of the conversation that I think everybody's missing. I've heard every reason under the sun as to why Vladimir Putin is doing this. I myself have given every reason under the sun as to why he can be doing this. The nuance and the complexity, it's all important, and we should have a conversation about all the various factors that led to this point. Me personally, you guys know, I would have never expanded NATO in the first place. I think that was provocative, and that does give him, at the very least, a cover story for his own imperial ambitions. So I never would have expanded NATO in the first place. And even if we didn't do that, and this is the main point, there's still a very high likelihood that Putin would be doing this because he wants that natural gas. He wants control of that region. And the other important point is, listen, even though it's perceived from Putin and Russia as NATO expansion is aggressive, nobody ever really brings up the fact that in reality, NATO had no hope of overthrowing Putin. There was no way that, NATO would have launched an offensive attack against Vladimir Putin. Now, why do I say that? Because he has nuclear weapons. It would be absolutely psychotic for NATO or the United States or whoever to actually launch an aggressive offensive attack against Vladimir Putin. It's just not possible. The guy has nuclear weapons. So even though they perceive it as Western aggression, that NATO expansion is that, and to an extent it is, also the ultimate thing that he's feigning concern over and fear over is not in the cards, because no American leader is crazy enough, not Donald Trump, not George W. Bush, not Joe Biden or anybody, no American leader is crazy enough to try to aggressively overthrow a country that has a giant reserve of nuclear weapons. And nobody brings that point up. So look, this is a new piece of evidence that I think is really important. It's not really new evidence. It's just a light is being shown, whatever it is on it in this phenomenal video. Again, I want to plug the video one more time. If you guys don't watch it, you have no idea what you're missing. You have to watch this video. It's very rare you find something discussing a political issue that is just like top tier objective, just as objective as humanly possible. Try to take out all opinion and just lay out all the facts and, let the conclusions point in whatever direction they will based on the raw data. But that's what this is here. So real life lore, L-O-R-E, why Russia is invading Ukraine. Check it out. It's worth, 31, 32 minutes of your time. And you'll get a real sense of the entire picture. There absolutely were missteps from the West, but I really think it's kind of unavoidable given the set of facts here that at least the intention behind what Putin is doing is actually very similar to George W. Bush in Iraq. George W. Bush in Iraq was all about imperial ambitions, geostrategic control of a vital region, the fact that we couldn't control Saddam, and it was about oil. Vladimir Putin invading Ukraine is about, he said it himself in half that speech, imperial ambitions, geostrategic control of a vital region, the fact that he can't control Yanukovych and a Western-aligned Ukrainian government, and natural gas. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.